From the short film Naomi Raplansky at 100, we have Megan Rossman.
Hi.
Megan. Hi, Megan. And from the film Take Me to Prom, we have Andrew Moir. Is it Moir?
It's Moir.
Moir.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll remember that. I promise. Yeah, so welcome all of you. It's going to be exciting to talk about these films.
It absolutely is, Jim. And, you know, we've got a lot of questions for our filmmakers. So I say, let's go ahead and just dive in and
Sure.
do this thing. And of course, for those who are watching live, please feel free to ask any questions that you may have. We'll weave those in sort of as they come up or when's appropriate throughout the interview process. But I want to turn our attention first over to the Paint Wizard. So my first question is actually going to be for Jessica Wolfson, who is one of the directors for the Paint Wizard. And Jessica, my question for you is about the Paint Wizard herself. This is such an interesting film about such a energetic and creative personality here in Austin. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of choosing Millie as your subject?
Sure, yeah, and I hope Millie is able to join and also share her insights in the world as well. My co-director Jessie Orrit and I met Millie through one of her clients, someone whose house Millie was painting, and we heard about Millie, and we thought, and through the client who said, oh, you've got to meet her. She's amazing. She's got an incredible story. So we took her out for lunch at Magnolia Cafe. And 4 hours later, we walked out of that lunch and we're like, wow, she is as big, even more amazing than we were promised. And we've got to make a film about her. And she's a really interesting person who's been going through, a lot in her life. She's got a story that I feel is relatable to a lot of people about transition and rejection and trying to come out and find out who she is as a person, as a woman, in the world, as a painter, and everything like that. And so we really just wanted to spend a lot of time with her, get to know her, and really have her tell that story.
Yeah, it was so interesting to see a little bit of her story. Of course, it's a short film, and by the way, I don't know if we mentioned this or if you mentioned it, Jessica, but when we say paint wizard, this is a house painter. Right.
Yes.
This is not somebody who sits at a canvas and with a little brush. She's out, like, I'm a engineer, and some of the stuff that she was showing in this film, like how she was painting the eaves of houses and stuff. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. But I guess with such a rich personality as Millie, there's just so much there, and you've got such, you've got a narrow kind of either a narrow focus or a not too deep examination. How do you go about as a filmmaker kind of narrowing it down to, the 5 or 6 or 7 minutes that we get for Millie's story?
Yeah, so I feel like for Millie, we really wanted to capture both her story, who she is as a person, how she got, just her whole story from how she got to who she is today, but then also really honor and show the painting, because the painting itself is pretty remarkable. I mean, as you can see in the film, she paints houses completely by herself. She normally does not wear shoes. She's up on a ladder in a mini skirt and her little signature cat ears, and in the Austin heat, doing this. And it's that in itself was remarkable. And so, we ended up making the decision that we wanted to just spend a finite amount of time with her. We thought that spending a little bit, not so much time, I think we filmed for about 7 or 8 days over the course of 2 months. Originally we wanted to follow a house being painted, and then see and tell her story through that, but then it ended up it just schedule-wise didn't work that well, but that's fine. And so really just getting her story plus the painting, plus kind of seeing her out in action every day, like a glimpse, you know, this is a short film. And so we really just wanted a small glimpse of her life to really just highlight those things that we were so fascinated and interested by.
I'm definitely fascinated.
Yeah.
This is as someone who lives in the Austin area, and I was watching this one with my partner, and the whole time we were thinking like, okay, well, do we need to paint the awning? Do we need to paint outside? You know, should we give Millie a call? Because we were that fascinated and that enamored by everything that we saw. And I think what was most captivating to us is that this is sort of like two separate stories put together. This is the story of someone who is very almost larger than life, a very bold persona, but also someone who has some very real vulnerabilities that that you were able to help capture on screen and to help funnel into our televisions, our home theaters. I guess my question for you is, when we have this mix, this larger than life story, and also this person who's very real and has these very real hurts and wants and all of those things, as a viewer, what would you like for me to most learn from Millie's story? Like, what takeaways and like daily lessons for my life should I glean?
Yeah, so Millie is, you know, what you see is what you get. She's, you know, no holds back. She will tell you the truth about everything. She very much wears her story and her emotions on her sleeve, and you can really see that, and we really appreciated that. I believe that's Millie actually calling in. Millie, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
We're just talking about you.
Hey.
But I was gonna say that, you know, getting to know Millie and getting to know her story and having her open up to us was really an honor. She was, you know, very forthcoming, very honest, and I feel like that part of her story is really what we wanted to show. We wanted to show our experience spending time with her, the love that we feel towards her as well.
Yeah. And Millie, thanks for joining us, by the way. No worries. We're a pretty calm audience right now. And I know we've been talking about the short film for a few minutes here, and we want to finish up hearing from you, of course. Tell us a little bit about your experience as kind of the star of the Paint Wizard. For us watching, there seems to be a certain amount of vulnerability, although you may not see it that way, I don't know, in kind of presenting yourself in a film like this to a wider audience. Can you tell us about what that experience was like for you?
It was just fun. There was nothing outside of what I already do, except there was a camera in front of me, and they were prompting me.
Yeah, you know, they did such a great job in representing you, I think, in this movie, and I hope you agree, that I kind of knew that would be your response to this question. Like, it would be no big deal for you to put yourself there in front of the camera. You look like a natural. And I just want to say to both of you that I think you should take this film, maybe with a little bit more editing, and make it a trailer for a new series on Netflix called Thrift Shopping and House Painting with Millie.
You know how many times I've heard somebody say they want to do that with me?
Oh, boy.
4 times since I've been trans. Somebody's come along and said, oh, we can make a movie with you. No, I don't really believe it's the law.
Yeah.
Who wants to watch a tranny buying secondhand clothes and painting a house?
I do.
I mean, hand raise here. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Millie. And I hope to see, as you know, again, as an Austin local, I hope to see you when I'm out thrift shopping. I hope to see you there myself. Probably give me some tips, because I am just an absolute mess at it myself. But thank you so much, Millie. Go ahead.
I can only dress myself. I couldn't dress you or anyone else.
Well,
and that's super fair.
Millie does have great style, and you know, getting to thrift shop with her, which is one of my favorite things, was super fun.
Well, if you can't dress Will, I think he might have some things around his house that need to be painted.
That we can do.
I didn't hear it. I didn't hear what you said.
I think Will may have some house painting at his place that he may be looking to have done.
Whose place?
Will.
Me,
one of
here
our
in
hosts.
Austin. Yeah,
Movie Bears.
Here in Austin. Yeah, I'll have to hit you up soon as soon as I'm ready for my next painting project. But Jessica and Millie, thank you so very much. We're so excited to see the Paint Wizard, and for anyone that wants to watch the short film and hasn't watched it yet, it is part of the documentary shorts lineup. So just look for that in the either on the schedule or within Inventive, and you'll be able to watch this amazing short film yourself. Next up, I want to shift our attention over to Megan Rossman, who is the director of Naomi REPLANSKY at 100, which is also part of the documentary shorts lineup. Megan, first of all, thank you so much for sharing the words and the wisdom of Naomi with us. Can you tell us a little bit about why you chose Naomi as your subject, and maybe a bit about what you learned from the experience of working with her?
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's really wonderful to be able to talk with all of you and think about Naomi. I actually saw Naomi read poetry the same year that I made this short film about her. And the thing that struck me so much was she's 100 years old, and when she opens her mouth to perform, I never would have guessed it, because her voice is so strong and she's so performative and such an incredible artist that I just felt like she needed to be documented. And in asking around a little bit, it seemed like she had always been a bit camera shy. So she wasn't very comfortable being recorded, but I felt this sense of importance to make sure that her material was recorded so that there was like a strong visual record of her. And that's what led me to make the project. I think now, during this time that we're all experiencing different challenges, thinking about the fact that Naomi is currently living through her second pandemic of her lifetime is something that gives me a lot of inspiration. So she turned 102 in May, and she seems to be doing fine. I haven't seen her since all of this started, but we do communicate via email, and she said that she doesn't mind being inside. So I think if she can do 2 pandemics in her lifetime, then certainly we can live through one.
Yeah, I had not, I'll just say that I had not actually even heard Naomi's poetry before, and maybe that's shame on me, but after watching the film, I'm like, I need to know more about her. So I'm, like everybody, I'm Googling her, right? And finding out more about her poetry, and what she's accomplished, and it's amazing, and I'll probably start reading more. But you mentioned that she was a little uncomfortable maybe in front of the camera. That did not come across certainly in the film, as you said. And matter of fact, she seemed to have kind of this like eagerness to relate them to us. Are there, in the filmmaking process, are there specific techniques that you use to capture and present to us something that looks so intimate and impactful on the screen when it's just one person reading her poetry from a book? I thought the impact I thought was fantastic for just such a simple concept. So maybe you can tell us more about that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that this came across well, and also that you're reading her poetry, because I think everyone should have the opportunity to look more at her work, and some of it is available online. In terms of the setup, this was not my original plan at all. I actually wanted to follow Naomi around. She was like participating in a dance class at a senior center nearby, and I was like, oh, this is so wonderful. I'd love to film some of this and then just see if she has a reading. And there were 2 things that happened. One was that she really had not done any readings. She did one around her 100th birthday, but hadn't done anything and didn't have anything in the future. So I realized that I had to create some sort of environment to get that type of reading from her, as opposed to her just reading in her house for me. And then the other thing that had happened was that her partner, Ava Kolich, was not doing as well health-wise. And so it was requiring a lot of time and effort from NAOMI. And I just realized that trying to follow them around was maybe too challenging considering everything that was going on. So I coordinated with NAOMI to choose a day in the film studio. And I also had a bit of an audience to help her feel like there were some people there, that she wasn't just performing for me. So I had a wonderful crew, all women, that were there, and we had, you know, people on different cameras and sound, and then we had a couple production assistants too. So it just helped to have her in a studio, but also create an environment where she felt like she was performing for people. And I encouraged us, like, we applauded when she performed, and, you know, we tried to have more of a direct engagement with her so that there was some sort of back and forth.
Oh, that's wonderful. And like I said, that totally makes sense now that you mentioned that there may have been an audience there other than, you know, in my mind, I'm picturing just, you know, her, one person with a camera. It's good. But now that you mention that, yeah, that totally makes sense. So thanks for sharing.
Absolutely.
There's something very lyrical about her poetry, which is, I know, sort of a base thing to maybe say about poetry in general, but specifically for her poetry. When I read it versus when I hear it, they're two very, very different experiences. The rhyme scheme, the meter, just all of that, it sends you, it elevates you, it pulls you in. And that was such a wonderful experience, because I maybe read some pieces, but I never heard a reading before. And while I didn't get to experience it in studio or on location with you, I feel like I got to capture a little bit of that. And she mentioned one specific line, and this was just sort of in setting up her life, you know, 100 years now, 102 years of wisdom. She specifically says, you know, like the black hairs have turned white, the black hairs have turned gray, but wisdom hasn't come along with that. And that was the only thing I maybe took issue with NAOMI at all with, because I felt like there's so much wisdom that just pours out of her, even within the short film. I guess the question I have for you really is, with all of this wisdom, all of this parted things from all of her words and just her life story, what are the big lessons that you have taken away from your time with NAOMI and your readings? Like, how has she impacted you?
Well, I think there are two things I want to say. First of all, NAOMI is so modest. She actually thinks her life is completely uninteresting, and that she kept trying to have me make a film about her partner, because she said, oh, my partner's so much more interesting. Like, she, you know, survived the Holocaust, and she took a train out when she was a child, and all these stories. But NAOMI has worked so many different jobs. She worked in computer science early on. Like, she's just done a million things. And I think what I've taken away from my time with her is just this idea of perseverance. And she has just kept pushing through. She came from a very modest start, never had a lot of money, and she's always been able to find her way. And even though she never had the resources to focus on poetry full time, she was always working other jobs, she still is an award-winning poet, an award-winning published poet. And so she really didn't let anything stand in her way. And also at a time where it was so much harder for women. So I think that perseverance has really given me a lot of hope, especially, you know, during such a challenging time.
And it certainly is a challenging time right now, and being able to take solace in the experiences of those who've, one, come before, and two, who have this wisdom and this experience for us is so crucial. I guess my last question for you is really going to be one that puts you on the spot. If you were someone, you know, like Jim had mentioned, you know, this is his discovery of NAOMI REPLANSKY, and you want to get started, what's the one poem? What's your favorite? What's the go-to? Where should Jim, me, everyone, where should we start?
That's a good question. Well, she has this poem about the Great Depression, and forgive me, I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but it starts with, like, you know, $5, $4, $3 too, and they're running out of money, but yet they still have to survive. And so I think that's a really interesting starting point, both from the sense of motivation, but also in terms of her life arc, because she started writing I'm trying to remember exactly how old she was. I want to say she was like 7 years old, and she dictated a poem to her mom, and her mom wrote it down. And that's how it started for her. During, again, just such a challenging time, the depression, this idea of survival. And I think if you start with that early work, you can start to see her arc as a poet.
I'm looking forward to that because, again, like I haven't had that deep of an experience with NAOMI's work, and now I'm hungry for more. And following that arc is we talk about movies on our show all the time, and being able to follow kind of that narrative arc of her work is right up my alley. So thank you so much, Megan. That's your work again is with Naomi REPLANSKY at 100, and it is part of the documentary shorts lineup. And if anyone wants to check it out, go check out the aGliff schedule, go check out Eventive, and it's right there for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
And I want to shift attention over to our last guest of the day, and that's Andrew Moir, who is the director of Take Me to Prom, which is also part of the documentary shorts lineup. So for anyone that's watching right now, 3 wonderful short films, 1 location, super easy for everyone to find. Andrew, your film is such a delight. I believe it follows 7 different subjects on screen as they recount their prom stories. And I think what was so fascinating for me is that if you were to show me any one of these individual interviews by themselves, they would have been entertaining, engaging. They would have been great stories. But I especially liked watching them lined out in exactly the order that they were set up, because it tells a very compelling arc across the stories, not just of the individual stories, but also of the progress made in this one specific area. So can you talk a little bit about your selection process for these subjects, as well as, the process that you got, whittling down to these 7 and aligning them the way that you did?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, I was really interested in using prom as a way to capture how queer liberation has changed over the course of a lifetime, but using prom as like the entry point into that like larger social story. And I knew that I always wanted to find people who I could line up from, oldest to youngest, and hopefully get some kind of like arc through their stories. And so once I knew I wanted to make the film, I just like cast my net as wide as I could, and I met with as many people as I possibly could. So I like put posters up on the street, and I just like found people on social media, and I asked around everybody who I could think of who might know someone. And I ended up meeting with about 70 people, and they were like, most of them were all like just the most interesting people. And when I met them, like we would go for a drink or whatever, and I told them that I just wanted us to like get to know each other, and I didn't want prom or high school to be on the table for what we talked about. And so I just kind of met as many people as I could, found the people who just like struck me as super interesting, super great storytellers, people who brought like amazing wisdom and life experience. And of course, I also had to consider that they had to not only like represent like kind of a different decade, but they also had to represent like all of the possibilities of the rainbow, of the LGBTQ rainbow. So it was really hard. And that's why I had to meet with so many people. And I ended up like postponing production a couple of times because I just didn't have the right combination of people. But yeah, I was really happy with the people who I found and who I got a chance to meet.
That's, I think the whole approach that you took of using prom, which is really a rite of passage that maybe not everybody has gone through prom, but a lot of people have experience with a prom. And even in your movie, I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of the subjects actually didn't even go to prom. If I remember right, it was just kind of prom adjacent.
It was very prom adjacent.
Yeah, and that was pretty amazing. And I mean, some of them were happy prom experiences, and some of them were kind of painful. I mean, especially I think kind of the early ones. You know, some of them are really tinged with a lot of regret. So I just loved the scope of this short film. And can you once you decided what you wanted to do, can you talk about how you kind of settled on the structure of each of these kind of vignettes? Because you mix interview techniques, which were, I thought, great, with some kind of I don't know what you want to call it, but other shots, whether they be still photos or B-roll or whatever you want to call it. Maybe you could talk about how you kind of came up with that structure, and if that's something you had early on in your mind for these vignettes.
Yeah. Well, normally I make observational films. So normally the kinds of documentaries that I make, it's just me, maybe one other person, and we're filming someone in their everyday life, just like following them around with the camera. Oftentimes I'll film them for years. But I really wanted to try my hand at an interview-based film. But what I wanted to sort of like maintain in the style and like feeling of an interview-based film was this feeling of like you're watching something unfolding all the time. So that's why I didn't want to talk to them about prom when I met them for the first time, because I wanted to hear about it for the first time when I was interviewing them. And that's sort of like the same thing when I was thinking about like what kind of visuals to incorporate in the film. Like I really didn't want to have anything else besides like them talking. I just kind of wanted like them talking in like a really cool background. But then as I started editing and thinking about it, I was like, okay, maybe I need to sort of incorporate something a little bit more to just sort of bring people into like the texture of the time when they were at prom, and like really almost like transport people through time over the course of 20 minutes. So I just wanted to like make it as interesting to watch as I could, because I was a bit reluctant to make an interview-based film because I didn't want to just have like interviews and B-roll. I really wanted it to feel exciting and feel alive. And so each person had like different visuals that seemed to sort of like match with whatever they were talking about. And so some people are like just completely staged reenactments, but even the reenactments, like I didn't want just like a film reenactment. I set it in like a TV that I found on the street that was like from the 70s, and made that like the film of the reenactments happen within that TV. So I really wanted to like heighten it as much as I could and just make it like as exciting to watch every single minute.
And it was really striking.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a comment that's actually come in from Jacob, who's watching live right now. And he says, no questions, just loved the docs, especially Take Me to Prom, which is where we're at right now, Andrew. So wanted to pass that along. And thank you, Jacob, so much for sending in that note.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
It's so interesting just how much of, as being a part of, the queer community myself, and knowing how many of the different things that we encounter in our daily life are so normalized and heteronormalized, and yet there's still things that we strive for and we set as very aspirational, and prom being absolutely one of them. I know for myself personally, while I had the closeted prom experience that a lot of us have, and which shows up a few times here in this, I also had the prom 2 experience in college, which was a major thing happening. A lot of gay straight alliances and things like that in colleges were putting on prom 2, and gave a chance for those of us who are part of the queer community to have that authentic experience that we didn't have so much. And I think what was so refreshing for me, seeing that and knowing that, you know, I had to reclaim my prom experience after the fact, and then seeing the later subjects in the film who are claiming their prom experience in real time, whether it be through bold and courageous action of fighting against bigoted policies at their school, or just being authentically true to themselves and just saying, hey, this is who I am and let's do this. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of hope there, I guess. So the question I really have for you there is, what's the arc going forward? Do we see that, you know, the prom experience is going to be more and more authenticated and true to, you know, tomorrow's youth or the youth afterwards? What struggles they face? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but being able to line this all up, what's your view on the whole arc of the thing?
Well, I do have to say, like, I was really struck when I was speaking with all of the teenagers who I was interested in casting in the film, just by how at ease they felt and how comfortable they were. I was also really kind of interested in how a lot of them were very reluctant to kind of like identify as anything. Like they were just kind of like, I don't know, you know, I live in Toronto. I didn't grow up in Toronto, but I live in Toronto now. And so I was looking for kids who went to high school in Toronto. And like, I felt like half of the schools that these kids went to were like one gigantic, you know, GSA. And so I don't know, it was pretty impressive and like pretty exciting. And you know, someone like Carolyn, for example, like she's the youngest person in the film, and she was the only person who like claimed any kind of identity. Like she's like, I'm a lesbian. Like she was a 17-year-old lesbian. And I just find that like for most of the instances of the other kids who I met, they hadn't really like grasped onto any identity yet, but that's because they didn't feel like they had to. So I don't know. I think that there's going to be a real openness for people to kind of just like go to prom however they want to. I also find that like there's just less of a, I don't know what it's like for you guys, but also the whole date thing is becoming less of a thing. So it's not like people have to go, like there's no like pressure that you have to bring a date to prom. So that really opens things up too. But also, I know that you know, I live in a very particular place, and so I know that like there's other places where that openness just isn't there. So hopefully, like films like these can help people, you know, just embrace people who are different, and hopefully kids can feel more comfortable just to be themselves and to stand up for themselves. But I don't know, it gave me a lot of hope, and it was really cool. Like I was really impressed by how just mature and wise and like self-aware a lot of these younger people were. I don't see why that wouldn't change.
Andrew, I don't know. You seem like a fairly young guy to me. You're talking about the younger folks in your movie. I don't know where you fall in kind of the generational spectrum of the scope of your film, but did you have any prom experience that kind of triggered your idea for this movie, or kind of colored your you know, an interest in hearing about other people's prom story?
To be honest, like not really. Like I didn't have any sort of like traumatizing or amazing prom. I'm 29, so I would have graduated from high school in 2008, I think, 2008. And I wasn't out in high school. I went to a Catholic high school. I wasn't out at the time. I went to prom with a bunch of friends.
Okay.
You know, it was fine. Like I actually had a really good time. I was sort of reluctant to go. I just was a bit of, I guess I would say I was one of those like kids who really like hated high school. So the idea of going to prom, I was like, I don't want to go, but I ended up having a really good time. and it really wasn't something that, you know, I wouldn't like link it to like any kind of like struggle with my like queer identity at all. I picked prom just because I really wanted to explore, you know, identity with youth and how they've changed over the years, and I was just like struggling to find just some entry point, and I don't know why, but like prom just like struck me.
It's a great one.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, even if you didn't go to prom, like there's a reason why, and so and like, you know, I'm sure if you're to get like a documentary filmmaker to like psychoanalyze me, I could come up with like an amazing response. But, you know,
not asking that.
Yeah,
no pressure.
My prom was fine. My prom was fine.
We've had 2 comments come in. First of all, from our artistic director here at aGliff, Jim Brunzel says, great seeing Andrew again. We connected in Berlin where he told me about the film and brought the film to aGliff. And then Anne says, I know people still scarred by the prom ritual with dates not showing up. Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people are really were really traumatized. Like, and you know what, like, I was sort of expecting the older people's proms to be horrible and the younger people's proms to be great, but like that's not at all like what emerged from the stories that I had. Like, I actually found like some of the older people were pretty comfortable going to prom, like or you know, in Marcy's case, not going to prom at all. Whereas, you know, the Carmen, who's my age, I think exactly, like she had like the most traumatizing prom and like the most horrible high school experience. So it's like, I don't know. I don't know if it definitely, there's been changes, but like just because someone's, you know, in their 20s or 30s or 40s, like doesn't mean that their prom was easy. And I think a lot of people still like struggle. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, the thing that the big takeaway that I've got is that there is definitely, you know, even though there's struggle and there's still, you know, the scars that come up with it that are both part of and maybe even external to the LGBTQIA experience. The overall arc of the thing does seem to be moving towards people being able to have more and more of an authentic experience, even if they have some of those traumas. And I want to thank you, Andrew, so much for bringing this film and to sharing that arc with us. It was very captivating. And again, for anyone that wants to watch this one, it is part of the documentary films, short films lineup. So we're getting close on time there. And as we look to wrap up, again, I want to remind everyone here that you can watch all of these films right now as part of the aGliff 33 Prism lineup. All you have to do is check the event schedule to find out more details. You can go into the Eventive site just as while you're watching the films, just look for the documentary short films, watch them. It's not just the 3 films here that we talked about, but a few others as well, all of which are 100% worth your time. I also want to remind everyone that you can catch us, Jim and I and Brad, our third, talking to more filmmakers all throughout the festival with our Movie Bears podcast, midday and mid-morning Movie Babble break. Right. And don't forget to check out moviebearspodcast.com for more film reviews from our bear perspective. On behalf of the Movie Bears podcast and on behalf of aGliff, I want to thank all 3 of our guests today and Millie, who had to drop off, but Millie as well. And we'd also like to thank all of you here who are watching and listening at home for supporting the festival. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was great to talk to everyone.
Great to talk to you.